Hey guys, welcome back to the internet. We're getting really into the spooky season now, so it's just going to be scary story videos from here until Halloween. Sorry if you can hear the washing machine going, Faye puked on my sheets again. But let's get into the stories. What's the paranormal story you have? I remember a few years ago, my friends and I were going to this downtown Halloween pub crawl thing, and we were getting our Halloween costumes on. As I stepped out of the bathroom, I heard this gruff old man's voice go, "Who are you?" So I spun around. The bedroom near the bathroom was empty. Lights off, and I asked my friend if she heard anyone. She just goes, "Oh yeah, that's my grandpa Perez." Like it's a common occurrence for her. Yeah, I have a hard time thinking that I would ever get used to hearing voices in my house. I farm in a rural town in the western US, and our farm is a ways out of town, so naturally it's pretty eerie at night. We flood irrigate, so the water needs to be moved from field to field, and those water changes just come whenever the fields are finished. At each end of our farm, there is a big row of trees that once again gets kind of eerie at night. So my dad and I are driving down the farm road at around 3 a.m. We reached the row of trees, and as the headlights hit the trees, I saw a strange figure. It looked to be the rough shape of a human, but not quite the same. Taller and more hunched over, kind of like a 6'3" old woman in a shawl. I only saw it for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but it was long enough to make my blood run cold. I was so freaked out, so I didn't say anything to my dad. About 30 seconds later, my dad started driving faster and looked over at me and said, "I wasn't going to say anything, but did you happen to see a strange figure walk between the trees?" I nodded and we changed the water and went home. There has been a local legend about a creature that looks like what we saw that has been talked about since the 40s. It's supposed to be similar to a Native American skinwalker, and it would make sense to me. We have found Indian pottery and arrowheads all over our farm. Neither of us have seen it again, but it's still in the back of my mind when I drive that corner of the farm. Man, skinwalker stories can get pretty creepy. There's even a place a few hours from me called Skinwalker Ranch, where supposedly all sorts of crazy stuff happens. If you haven't heard of it, I would recommend looking it up. But I haven't gotten myself to venture over there yet. So when I was a new mom, shortly after my grandmother had died, we visited her family cottage several states away. It was a small 2-story cottage, with the bedrooms being situated on the second floor. My son was only about 4 to 6 weeks old, so I was worried that he would keep my older family members awake at night, with needing to be fed, being new to the world, etc. Well, the inevitable happened, and my son would not stop fussing in the middle of the night. I decided to go outside with my little guy to get a bit of fresh air. The cottage had burned down to the chimney a couple of years earlier, and the house had been rebuilt, so I wasn't familiar with its new tits and bits. I went outside, and apparently the door was unlocked from the inside, but the outside lock was engaged. Now, here I am in the middle of pretty much nowhere, locked out of the house at 3 a.m. with a newborn. I tried the door again and could not get it open. I even threw pebbles and then rocks at my husband's window, to no avail. As I sat outside the door, my back leaning against it, about to lose it completely, I heard a click. The door was unlocked. The door that I had tried dozens and dozens of times to open simply just unlocked. Everyone was still soundly asleep and didn't recall hearing any noises at all in the morning. The door had a window, and I could see the entirety of the bottom floor through it. No one was there, but it unlocked for me. Yeah, the ghost probably saw what you were going through and is like, let's just make this all end before she explodes. So I have 2 brothers, one older by 2 years and one younger by 9 years. My younger brother was supposed to be a twin. Sadly, my mom lost her. My little brother, as a baby and toddler, was always staring at the ceiling, laughing, and we always used to say, "He must be playing with his sister." It stopped after that, but as he got older, we noticed that he did a lot of talking to himself. We figured it was an imaginary friend. So one night, it was just my dad, my little brother, about 5 at the time, and I, still awake. It was pretty late for him to be up, like 9 p.m., and he was still running around full energy. I basically said to my dad, he's on his own getting him to sleep because I'm going to bed. So as I got to the top of the steps, I felt frozen, really the best way to explain it, and I listened to my dad trying to get my little brother downstairs. My dad is like, "Come on, you have to get to bed, it's late." He kept saying, "No dad, I'm playing." So my dad gave up and said, "Okay, fine, but you're going to be up here by yourself and I'm going to bed." And my little brother says loud and clear, "No dad, I'm not alone, never, I'm playing with my sister." To which my dad answered that I was in bed. He said, "No dad, my other sister, she's not ready to go to bed yet." Maybe the twin never actually died, she's just very sneaky. When I was struggling with heroin addiction, my mom, who is fairly religious, suggested I go to church and maybe talk to someone there about what was going on. I was pretty close to rock bottom at the time, so I thought, what the heck, I'll go talk to someone. I walked to a Catholic church down the street. I'm not Catholic, but it was the closest church, and walked in. This young preacher, he was wearing all black with the collar, looked about late 20s or early 30s with brown hair, green eyes, walked out into the hall the same time I had walked in and introduced himself as Father Mike. He looked at me and said, "You look like something is pulling you down. Do you need to talk?" I said yeah, and we sat in the entry hallway and talked. We talked for about 2 hours. Everything just poured out of me. I felt so comfortable with him and at peace. Talked about the addiction issues and how my life was so messed up at that point and that I was thinking about killing myself just to stop the cycle. He looked me in the eye with these crazy green eyes. I've never seen anybody with that shade of green before. And told me, "You don't have much time left. You keep using and you're on borrowed time, and there's not much of that left. Get yourself into detox and get your crap together. Otherwise, you won't have to worry about taking your life." I said, "Yeah, I know. I've done this a bunch of times." He cut me off and said, "I know, I'm being serious. If you don't get sober this time, you won't get another chance." When he said that, I got chills. So I thanked him for his time, called my mom, and she drove me to detox. On my way to the hospital, I told my mom about Father Mike, and she said that she was going to thank him for talking with me. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and my mom calls me in treatment. She says that she went to the church and asked for Father Mike. The staff said that there wasn't anyone named Mike who worked there, and there wasn't any young man with brown hair and green eyes. She asked if I was sure about Father Mike, and I said I was 100%. I still remember how green his eyes were. She checked at various other churches in the area, thinking I was high and wandered farther from the place I was staying. No one had a Father Mike, or anyone to fit his description. Mom is completely convinced that I had a run-in with my guardian angel. I wasn't so sure, but his eyes and the way he said, "You won't get another chance," instead of, "You might not get another chance," still gives me chills. I did go on to get sober and get my life together. Well, if all it takes for you to fix your life up is to be visited by some extraterrestrial being, then so be it. I hope it works out for you. I had a dream where I was hanging out with my best friend from 4th grade. Hadn't seen or spoken to him in years. He left randomly with someone I didn't know in a car I didn't recognize, and I woke up shortly after. Come to find out, he died in a car accident the night before, around 2 or 3 a.m., with his friend in the passenger seat, a few hours after I went to bed. Still wild to me. Can't really explain it away as a coincidence entirely, I don't think. But who knows. Hey, I've said it lots of times in these scary stories, dreams can just be full of very, unexpected things. The student center in my university used to have a restaurant/cafeteria/food court in the basement, with 2 sets of stairs going back to the first floor. Stories said that it was haunted, but I always thought it was a joke. I liked to study down there in the evening because the food court was closed, and the booths were empty, and that gave me a lot of space to spread out my books and notes, and some peace and quiet. The layout was that one set of stairs was next to the booths, so sitting where I was, I could see if anyone came or went. The other set of stairs were behind me, down a hallway that had some storage closets and the restrooms. There was nothing else down that hall. So I was studying one day in an empty food court, and I had to go pee. So I go down the hallway, into a bathroom, motion sensing lights turn on, I do my business, and I start washing my hands when I hear a soft cough, cough, inside the restroom, as if someone was trying to get my attention. I finish washing my hands, and I turned and realized that the stalls are open. I'm alone in this restroom. I briskly went to the booth and started packing my bags, and before I went up the stairs, I look around, and sure enough, there was nobody there. I start making my way up the stairs when I heard the same cough, cough, right behind me. I've seen the movies, I did not turn around. I also never sat down there again, even after they remodeled it. Man, if I was a ghost, I'd probably hate it if I had to just sit in a bathroom forever. My house was bought by my grandparents when it was being built in the 50s. One of the builders fell off the rafters and died where the kitchen would be. They never knew his name, but he is the only one to die at the house. He hangs around. We call him Bob. He usually just slides stuff off the kitchen counter onto the floor. He also likes to open the cabinet doors. One in particular is the one next to the hallway. It opens and you skin your shin when you walk into it. Did that the other day and got pissed. I bought a new latch for the door and it's now hard to open. The night after I did that, I was in the living room and the cabinet doors started making a racket. The cats were with me, so I figured that it was Bob and said aloud, "Knock it off, Bob." And it stopped immediately. I said thank you, and that was the end of it. He's been there with us for over 60 years. He's a pretty cool guy. On a side note, I think I know why he fell and died. Every time I dig a hole in the yard, I find nothing but pull tabs and broken beer bottles. Those guys must have been plastered the whole time they built my house. So if you die while you're drunk and you become a ghost, are you forever a drunk ghost then? Since I was a little kid, my nightmares have contained this terrifying child. He has been burned black, and his mouth is blood red. Sometimes even when I'm awake, I get a thought of him totally out of the blue. It never fails to make me go hot and cold with fear. Something my mother used to say meant that someone was walking across my grave. At about 4:30 this morning, I woke up because it sounded like someone walked into my room. I was still groggy when I got a mental image of that child standing outside my window staring in at me. My kitten was sleeping right beside me, and he woke up, staring at the window. First of all, Frank is a dummy. He's the only clumsy cat I've ever known, and he's the sort of cat that meows out the window at birds. Frank stood up and arched his back, and his tail puffed up and he growled at the window. Then he crept across me like he was stalking something and slid onto the windowsill. He stood there and turned sideways, all puffed up for a long time. Nothing else happened, but it creeped me the F out. Yeah, I found that there's really two kinds of nightmares to wake up from. There's the kinds where you wake up and you think, it was just a dream, it's all over, and you feel much better that it was all fake. And then there's the kind of nightmares where you wake up, but it's still taking over your mind and you're just like terrified to even go back to sleep. Yeah, I've had plenty of nights like that. My mom worked at an old hotel in my town that was notoriously haunted. My brother and I would always run around and play while she was working. We went down in the basement one day, and when the elevator opened on the basement floor, we saw a janitor standing there with a cleaning cart. He was a tall black man in a blue custodial suit and had a huge smile. We said hello and went on our way, and didn't think anything of it. Sometime later, we mentioned to our mom that we met the janitor, and she looked extremely concerned and said that they didn't and had never had a janitor. Well, which are you more afraid of, an actual ghost janitor or somebody who's sneaking into the hotel pretending to be a janitor? I saw a UFO. This was around 2008. I was staying on a cottage farm in England, I can't remember the exact location, for a night, with one of my close friends at the time. I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and had difficulty breathing. I tried to scream and failed, so I knocked over a lamp to get the attention of my friend's mom. My parents decided to take me to the hospital, but they needed to get changed first, so they left me in the car under a blanket. While I was in the car, I saw a massive ball of red light come up from the horizon, and then go down again promptly, like a semicircle movement. When I got to the hospital, my memories are a little blurry, but I think that they pretty much said that there was nothing wrong with me. It didn't feel like nothing, I could hardly speak. I thought this was sleep paralysis, because it all seemed to fit. Until I asked my dad if he'd had any UFO experiences, and he said that when we were staying on that farm, he saw a big ball of red light, like the sun. He said that he saw it from the window of the cottage, seeing as he had to stay there to look after my younger brother. He saw something large and red on the horizon, and specifically remembers thinking it was weird. Later that night, I had a weird nightmare of a spindly brown hand, all sinewy, almost like it was made out of silly string or something, reaching out from underneath my friend's bed. It wasn't really a nightmare. I was half awake and aware of my surroundings, but I had little floaters of light in my field of vision, sort of like what you see when you screw your eyes shut really tight. I have previously attempted to reconstruct what I saw using Photoshop, but I couldn't get the sinews or the floaters to look right. I always discounted this experience as sleep paralysis before my dad told me what he'd seen. Now I'm not so sure. You know, I kind of think it's funny that we try to label and identify what it could be, even though we don't really have proof of any of the things existing on their own. So like if you're arguing over somebody, it's like, I think it was aliens, or I think it was Bigfoot. It's like, well, technically there's no real proof of either one of those, so could be both, could be neither, could be anything in between. Let me tell you all about the time I became psychic. So a little bit of backstory first. My father divorced my mother when I was 4, and has seen several other women since. All but one, very nice people. He was seeing the woman who would eventually become my stepmother, who I adore, but she lived a town over. When my half-brothers were staying with their mother, he would leave me alone at the house where he visited her. Me, being a 17-year-old high school senior with urges, didn't care that he left, and I would just chill and play games or whatever. The other bit of backstory is that back in 2005, my dad nearly lost his leg to a flesh-eating disease. He managed to recover without amputation, but it still hurts and his ankle is permanently fused. Anyway, a few years ago, on a Saturday night, around 9, this was the situation. I was chilling out in my living room playing Xbox, and I was home alone. Dad had been gone for a few hours, and my brother wouldn't be back until the next day, so I was pretty relaxed. However, at exactly 9:10 p.m., I knew something was wrong. Deeply wrong. I had no idea what it was, and I had no idea where it came from. But I knew something was terribly wrong. Usually the feeling goes away after a few seconds, like negative thoughts, but this wasn't going away. It was bad enough that I had to stop playing the game and go into my room, inspecting things to see if something had fallen, something was broken, etc. I didn't know what was wrong, so I figured that would be the reason. But nothing was there. I checked the kitchen and living room, nothing. Check all my electronics, nothing. But I'm not taking no for an answer. I know for a fact that something is wrong. So I start going to every room in my house. The backyard, everything. I'm starting to grow really paranoid at this point, and the feeling still hasn't gone away. That's when I get a call from my soon-to-be stepmother. Since it had snowed recently, the roads were icy, and Dad had slipped and broken the ankle on his bad leg. When I asked when it happened, she told me about 10 minutes after 9. Exactly 9:10 p.m. I've never believed in psychic bonds, but something freaky happened that night that I've still never been able to explain. Maybe I have a deeper bond than I know. Well, that does it for all of the paranormal stories for tonight. We've got lots more scary stories coming in the next few days. I don't know that I'll get a new video out every night, but I'll get out as much as I can. So thanks for watching and look forward to more.